Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a Ukrainian show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and our guests today are Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always.
Thank you. And we have our man in Kyiv, Ivan Kucherenko. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Whoop.
Almost there.
Almost.
Yeah,
There
almost there.
There he is.
Hello, Sasha. Hello, Jonathan. Hello to everyone.
Ivan, I think that you probably have a movie for today.
Yeah, a really nice story right from the battlefield. I think Jonathan will love it, so we can start with this movie.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm braced.
Is the bridge over the canal. Right here is where the key events of this video will unfold, though the person filming has no idea. We hope he made it out alive, but take a close look at the concrete wall on the left and those buildings on the right. Later, everything changed. This is what that same street looked like after 300 days of fighting. And this is after 500 days. This is Chasiv Yar, Ukraine. It's smaller than Disneyland. By the time you're watching this video, the city has been under shelling for over 600 days. Drowned in smoke, no silence, no rest. Street battles are still raging. Before you watch one of the most intense moments from the battle for Chasiv Yar, let's briefly explain why this city matters. Both for
Video stopped. Yeah. Mark, can you please bring the video back?
Ukraine and Russia. You'll also understand why this fight is so vicious. After the fall of Bakhmut, Chasiv Yar became the next target for Russian forces. The straight line distance between the two cities is only 3.5 to 4 kilometers. But there's no such thing as a straight line in war. Chasiv Yar sits on higher ground, the highest elevation along the entire front line, which means all approaches to it go through lowlands. This gives defenders a clear advantage and makes it far harder for attackers to advance.
You don't see the video, don't see the movie, yeah? Okay, we can stop with it maybe. And next time I will show this movie because some technical issues.
Okay, speaking about front lines, what's happening right now that Russians amassed almost 200,000 strong man army around Pokrovsk and adjacent areas. And why it would be limited to 200,000? Why they can bring 500,000 people?
Their manpower reserves are running short.
Okay, so what? They run out of men? Maybe they will
They're
do.
running out of willing men.
There are no willing men in Russia. But you know what, Jonathan, it brings me now to somewhat wider perspective. Look, as Trump once said, okay, so they're fighting each other. Let them do more fighting and see who's right. The Russia may be right, maybe Ukraine is right. Let them just do more fighting. And then we'll see, then maybe they will come to the table or so. What's the problem with this approach? In my opinion, maybe he's absolutely right, and that's how it should be done. In my opinion, this approach is absolutely wrong simply because it eliminates the concept of aggressor, who is clearly Russian. Number two, it overlooks the fact, although now I will tell you slowly about what's happening in Venezuela. In fact, Russia is not just a bad boy when it concerns Ukraine. No, its ultimate evil around the globe especially when it's supported by Iran, by China, by North Korea, and so on, and it resists the West and specifically United States everywhere on every corner of the planet. And Ukraine is the only country that is clearly not just resisting Russia. It's already almost 4 years war. It's almost as long as the so-called Отечественная война. It's a part of the Second World War between Russia and Germany, or the
Great Patriotic War.
Union in Germany. It's almost 4 years. The Second World War there between Russia and Germany was from June 41 to May 45. So it was actually slightly less than 4 years. And this is approximately how it's already lasting this war. So the only way to eliminate Russia from the world stage and make it unable ever to resist United States, Europe, and all the civilized people in the world is to hurt it tremendously, to win, not just to get them away from Ukraine, but to beat them decisively so that the regime will be done and gone. So what United States, of course, what they're saying is, under Biden, under Trump, that no, we don't want to escalate because it's dangerous. But what they done, send the fleet to Venezuela, and now Russians are moving there all their equipment, C-300, C-400, and all the Iranian stuff and whatever else they can move. It doesn't matter that U.S. weapons are better than Russians. It doesn't matter because Russians weapons, they can still do a lot of damage, whether it's Ukrainians or in this case Americans. So what if Venezuela, backed by Russians and its allies, will say here is a no-fly zone, move down your armada 500 miles from the shore of Venezuela? Don't you think, Jonathan, that it brings us to Caribbean crisis too?
Oh, you mean as in Caribbean crisis, as in Cuban missile crisis?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, not quite to the level of Cuban Missile Crisis, because after all, Khrushchev gambled on putting nuclear missiles, short-range missiles, into Cuba, thus effectively giving him an intercontinental ballistic missile threat to the United States long before they actually acquired it, years before they actually built it.
There's a chance that it's all coming at a later stage, depending how the situation will be evolving. It's maybe still ahead of us. I'm talking about like today. Today, there is a huge obstacle on American policy toward Venezuela. It's a Russian support, sending armaments, sending men, sending all that stuff.
They are trying to create chaos. Is what the Russians
for sure. Yeah. Agree 100%. Yeah. But if U.S. would give now Ukraine tomahawks and say that, okay, here's 72 days and you get out of here, or tomahawk will start shoot, do you think Russia would send any stuff to Venezuela?
Well, if they increase the pressure on Russia to the degree that you are suggesting, then the Russians would have to think twice. Do we really want to increase the pain on ourselves that much more? And so this then becomes a contest of political wills. Yeah, and which side is willing to escalate further? Almost a game of chicken. You're aware of that.
Yeah, Jonathan, but you see, in this case, Russia, with what's going on in Ukraine and elsewhere, Russia is desperate. Therefore, they may beat U.S. in a game of chicken because they have nothing to lose.
A very interesting point. Yes, because if you recall, I mentioned in previous programs, the Soviet leadership / Russian really used to talk about the crisis of capitalism, in which they claimed that they had to be prepared to fight, survive, and win a nuclear war with the United States, because as socialism continued to gain successes throughout the world, eventually the U.S. would become so desperate that they would lash out with a nuclear attack in a desperate attempt to reverse the situation. So what you have here is the sort of a mirror image of the same situation. The Russians are becoming so desperate that they are willing to lash out with any means that they have available in a desperate attempt to get the pressure off them, or to try and retrieve some sort of political victory, if not military victory, from this current situation. So they are ratcheting up the pressure with what I call an asymmetric response. They are not responding directly to U.S. support of Ukraine and potentially greater support. They are not responding directly. They are responding in another area of the world. And the Russians themselves used to claim that that their development of ICBMs in response to U.S. bomber superiority and nuclear superiority in the 1950s, their development of ICBMs in 1957 was their asymmetric response, thus forcing the United States to change its strategy. So here we have another example of a Russian asymmetric response, asymmetricheskaya reagирование. So they respond not directly, but applying pressure or subversion or try to create chaos in another area in an attempt to distract their opponent. So this becomes a very interesting, shall we say, chess match.
Jonathan, very quick situation. In my opinion, when you have, let's see, if you're playing chess and your choice is of two relatively bad moves, but one is even worse than another one. So here, a situation of US, not now, but in the next couple of days, I'm pretty sure, will be this. Either you pull back your armada from the shores of Venezuela, and Trump's rating from 37% will go down to 27%, or you will give tomahawks to Ukraine and make a very clear message to Russia that these tomahawks are available to shoot at your territory at any time, but you'll be given, say, 36, maybe 48 hours to pull back your forces from Pokrovsk, from all other sensitive areas, and so on. Now, this is not, I'm not saying that this is ideal situation for the US, but this is a much more so-called plausible situation than either face Venezuela backed by Russia, China, and others military action with very unclear result, or just give it a few tomahawks. You have thousands of them and they're doing nothing and will do nothing for foreseeable future. Give them Ukrainians, because that's your only hope. That's your only real power in Europe. Who is a power in Europe who could withstand Russia? Who is it? France? Is it the UK? Is it Germany?
They aren't configured or mobilized to do that. They aren't. The U.S. aren't willing to take the step of mobilizing to basically virtually wartime mobilization, which is what it would take in order to successfully resist Russia. So what they are doing right now, and right now, you're correct. Ukraine is in the strongest single position to be able to resist Russia and inflict exorbitant casualties on the Russian.
So when you're playing a chess game, you're trying to attack where you are the strongest, where you have a great advantage in manpower, pawns or pieces or so on, and positional advantages or so on, not where you are weak. United States Monroe Doctrine, so to speak, has failed already many years ago in Cuba. Cuba is no longer controlled by United States. So we might as well say, well, it's a Monroe Doctrine minus Cuba. Who's going to listen to you? This is laughable. So then you might admit your Monroe Doctrine collapsed. And by the way, the Monroe Doctrine is that America for Americans. It doesn't mean for U.S. It means that for Venezuelans, and Argentina is for Argentinas, and so on and on and on. So there is no such thing as because it's a continent of America, South America, North America. Everything belongs to the United States, and therefore everything belongs to United States people and citizens and so on. It's absolutely false. So in this case, your armada moving to Venezuela, it's a farce, and it has to be either backtrack as soon as possible or go for a full possible exchange with Russia or whoever else. Maybe they will blink. Maybe all you do, you start attack on Caracas and all other major cities, take them over, and Russia will blink and they will not do anything.
Russia doesn't have the power projection capability to contest that. If that were to come.
It would be the same situation like in Syria when Russia actually left their ally Bashar Assad alone with the Syrian rebellions backed by Turkey and the United States and Israeli forces from different directions. So Russia doesn't have enough possibilities to assist their allies right now. They've begged Turkey to sell them back their air defense systems S-400, which Russia sold to Turkey. The main issue for Venezuela is air defense systems. Russia lacks air defense systems on their own. They can't cover their oil infrastructure with the air defense. They can't cover their military industry with air defense.
Venezuela is a much smaller country. It's much easier to defend than all Russia.
Yeah, but even in that case, Russia can't share any modern air defense with Venezuela. Venezuela has some air defense systems which they've previously bought in Russia, but I'm not sure how effective they will be against modern American fighter jets, because those air defense systems, they were designed in Soviet Union and actually built in Soviet Union. They're weapons of previous era, previous age of the war. So I think that when Donald Trump will issue an order to actually commit that special military operation in Venezuela, it will be quite short and mostly issued with the bombers and fighter jets, which will destroy the critical infrastructure of Venezuela, will just destroy their air defense, like Israel did in Iran, actually, because I think the air defense of Venezuela and Iran is quite similar, because they were both based on Soviet technologies, on Soviet age weapons provided by Russia, and we've seen how easily Israel during the 12 days war destroyed Iranian air defense, and then was actually quite easy to bomb Iranian military infrastructure. So probably the same issue will be with Venezuela. And Russia will not be able to back them because they don't have spare resources. They don't have spare air defense. They have nothing. They can send to them maybe a couple of military advisors, but they even lack military advisors. They've thrown all their forces on Pokrovsk, and they're trying to capture it by any cost. So they don't have
one last thing before you make your point, Sasha. The one last thing to consider is that the naval control, the control of the seas around that area, it's dominated by the United States. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, none of them, none, I say, and I assert, none of them have the capabilities to successfully contest U.S. naval control of the oceans. They are not. They are. China is working toward what I would call a sea denial capability in the Pacific and around in the areas around China, but they cannot project power and successfully contest U.S. naval control, particularly in the Western Hemisphere at this time. And certainly they are not even close to attaining that capability. So right now, if the U.S. were to engage in strikes in Venezuela, there is nothing that the so-called alliance between Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea could do about it. So right now, it would be a very one-sided contest. But unfortunately,
many times about logistics not being the Russian so-called.
Yeah. So why would we expect them to be, if they can't even project logistical capability to sustain a very short-range offensive across their border into Ukraine? What on earth makes any of us think that they can?
I know what Russia can send to Venezuela, a couple of donkeys. I think that
what in the world could they possibly project other than corpses? But in any case, it becomes a very interesting exercise. And since this program is Ukraine, Russia, China, and not Ukraine, Russia, China, Venezuela, we have to put it back in perspective. What Russia is doing and what Venezuela is doing, Russia is attempting to distract. They are attempting to create chaos. They are attempting, hopefully, to foment they create a fear of escalation. And so long as the U.S. President Trump is able to successfully withstand that and respond with an asymmetric response of his own, then the situation will remain pretty much status quo for Russia. Their offensive will continue to deteriorate against Ukraine, and they will not be able to successfully force Ukraine to a surrender.
I think that United States should solve the issue with Venezuela as soon as possible, and now is the best time for it, because if this issue would be left alone, and after probably a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, Russia will try to use this asset to destabilize situation in the United States even more. And I agree with Sasha that if President Maduro and his reign will not be removed, maybe Russia will try to repeat that trick with the Caribbean crisis, and like they've sent their nuclear, they've blackmailed Europe by sending their nuclear missiles to Belarus. They probably Russia will try to blackmail United States by sending their tactical nuclear weapons to Venezuela, or maybe China will try to use Venezuela to destabilize the situation in the United States. Now China will not go for angry and worsen relations with the United States and Donald Trump, so they will not support Venezuela, and Russia doesn't have any possibilities to support Venezuela right now. So I think that that now actually is the best time to solve the issue with Maduro and Venezuela, while all Russian resources are distracted of their war in Ukraine.
Well, the point of Russians and whoever supporting them, including probably China, is to show a picture where U.S. is no longer strong enough to sustain military operations around the globe, 2 or 3 different theaters of war. So let's see, Ukraine, the Middle East, China with Taiwan, and now Venezuela. And probably some actions now, Trump mentioned some action in Nigeria possible. So this is perhaps unsustainable unless U.S., besides a show of strength like sending Armada to Venezuela, actually use it and they use it decisively, killing all these Russians and air defenses, C-300, C-400, and so on, and doing it decisively and giving Russians 48 hours to evacuate all their forces, whatever they sent already, evacuate them immediately, or all of them will be killed one by one. So there are two stages. One is a show of strength, which was done by sending the fleet. Second one is actual show, not show of strength, but using your strength to extract military results. And that always puzzles me. This is much more responsible way of dealing with the situation than simply sending a few dozens of tomahawks to Ukraine. This is easy. You don't meet resistance from Russians or anybody else in the world. You just decided to do it. Pentagon already many times made its decision to send, and Trump says, no, not now, later. So if he is so indecisive on this issue, how he is going to decide to do any decisive moves in Venezuela? Jonathan, what do you think?
I think that what President Trump is banking on right now is his perceived unpredictability. Because if you will notice that the pattern of a lot of President Trump's actions during the first 9 months of his administration has been a certain unpredictability, not only to his adversaries but also in some cases to his allies. Have to be prepared for what he's going to do. So in any case, he is banking on unpredictability and the threat of being able to use that power. As the Russians once said during the Cold War period, only when they were talking about the capitalists, about the United States, they said that only the threat of a powerful retaliatory blow will stop the imperialists. In effect, if you go in on my mirror imaging thesis, they are in fact projecting their own attitudes. Only the threat of a powerful retaliatory blow will stop the Russians. So in this case, if in fact that becomes dependent upon the perceived willingness of the U.S. to use military power decisively in certain select areas. So in that case, I agree with you. It becomes necessary for President Trump at some point to respond decisively with military power in an area where its adversaries do not really expect it. If they can maintain that level of unpredictability, then his ability to deter future aggressive actions increases. But this becomes Sasha, a very complicated chess situation. You're complicating the situation in hopes that your opponent doesn't figure out how to get out of it.
Only one way: to get all the pieces out from the chessboard.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem with that. Yeah, so you're supposed to say, okay, let's start exchanging queens and rooks and knights. Okay, all of a sudden it's going to get down to pawn versus pawn. Dang, that gets really it simplifies the situation, but it's very costly.
But Jonathan, look, let's look at reality. In US right now, any very much so personified system of power, which is concentrated on the powers of president, which is Donald Trump. So there was a shutdown, and even before shutdown, it's the same thing. I mean, if you would eliminate the House and Senate and so on, and just leave the presidency intact, headed by Donald Trump, it's just good enough. And in reality, that's really all what it is. Now, there are unpredictability. There are good sides of it. There are not so good sides of it. Why? Because look, right now, he sends this armada. It's a show of strength. It's not a war. Nobody shot anybody down. But now it's very difficult to backtrack it and say, okay, you've done your job, thank you very much, now back home. It will be perceived as a weakness. So you send, okay, you heard about some resistance, Russians came, the North Korean came, or so. Oh, you know, what the hell with all that? Okay, we are going home. We want peace If you wanted a peace, why did you send Armada in the first place? So this is no win situation already cooking there. You agree?
That remains to be seen.
Yeah.
It really does, because it's a very complicated situation. And what we have here is it's going to be a very interesting series of moves over the next couple of weeks to see who backs down, or if in fact Venezuela says, okay, we'll stop sending fentanyl, okay, which may be the objective that President Trump is looking for, or there are other possibilities. But right now, what does remain is the fact that Russia is desperately, and I think this is a move of desperation, not a move of strength on Russia's part. They are desperately trying to create distractions. They are desperately trying to sow chaos, and in an effort to try and gain some sort of political victory, which they cannot achieve militarily. They certainly don't have the military power to back up what they're trying to do. So it's a very, shall we say, interesting situation. And I also believe, as I've alluded to on previous programs, that what Ukraine is doing in the midst of all this chaos, Ukraine is setting the stage for a decisive military counteroffensive. If they wanted to achieve strategic surprise, they could do so before the end of this year by attacking and isolating the Crimea, and thus following up with or they could be somewhat more conservative about it and continue to wear down the Russian forces and set them up for a spring offensive in early next year, which would isolate Crimea and then cause it to enforce the Russian occupiers to surrender. The trends seem to be moving that way in Crimea as the air defenses are steadily being degraded and worn down. So right now, what to me is the decisive factor here is the timing of a Ukrainian counterstroke, the timing of and placement of a Ukrainian offensive that will isolate Crimea. I believe that is the true center of gravity of this war. And that is what will have to be executed by the Ukrainians in the near to intermediate future. So right now they are continuing the correlation of forces, as the Russians used to call it. The correlation of forces overall continues to shift, particularly in favor of Ukraine, and that is the most important fact to emerge from this current situation. The Russians are trying to distract. I predict that it will not work.
I think, Ivan, would you agree with the fact that the Ukrainian diplomacy, including Zelensky, of course, they have to be a little bit more active to explaining to the West, including the United States, that Ukraine is very dependable friend of the West, and it can do so much to protect the West, to fight together with West, and even in certain scenarios, even become the leader of the West's resistance to Russia.
Yeah, definitely, because as we've discussed before, Ukraine now has the only army with the real battle experience of fighting Russia and actually fighting China in this war, because the Russian army is great by China, is backed by China, is backed by North Korea, and none of Western countries has any battle experience with fighting in modern war with the Russian army, which obviously is quite powerful, though they are not able to defeat Ukraine for almost 4 years. We should consider that Russian army is quite powerful, and if Russia actually Russia made their own decision, they actually should attack Baltic states instead of Ukraine, and by the time NATO will understand what to do with Russia, they've already conquered Baltic states and probably some part of Poland, maybe. But they made a great mistake and attacked Ukraine instead. So it's a powerful side of Ukrainian diplomacy and powerful side of Ukraine as ally that Ukraine has a second most powerful army in the world. And with real battle experience, and it's a great ally for European Union, for United States. So our diplomacy should use it, and our diplomats are using that strong side of Ukraine.
Ivan, you made one mistake. The Russian army is the second most powerful army in Ukraine. That's what
a distant second, as it appears to be right now.
And Ukraine has the second most powerful army in the world. The first most powerful army, I'm pretty sure, with the American army, army of the United States. And comparing to that, I think that Ukraine has the second most powerful army in the world.
And the beautiful thing about this is that for the Ukrainians in their diplomacy, all they need to do is convince the United States and Western allies and say, look at all we have been able to do for you in resisting Russian aggression. All we ask is that you give us more of the tools that we need, more of the weapons that we need to finish the job, to finish the defeat of Russia. And then we will be able to guarantee, in conjunction with aid from the European Union, as well as from NATO, and hopefully from incorporating Ukraine into NATO in defiance of a defeated Russia, that we will be able to secure European security for at least the remainder of the 21st century. And that is no small achievement in this day and age, given the forces that are arrayed.
Well, I'll say that it's obvious that economic sanctions, either they're not working or they're working maybe, if you're looking 5 years ahead, very slowly. So the easiest way is, if Trump wants to bring Russia to the table, and it appears to me that's his goal, send tomahawks, issue a statement to Russia, nice, polite, matter-of-fact statement, and they will come to the table. Failing that, Russia is extending its role in anywhere from now Latin America and Africa and Asia. And I'm scared. I'm planning to go to Baltic states this coming summer. But
take your helmet.
I'm not even sure that I would be able to do it, because Russia can start. They will not start the attack against Riga or Vilnius, Tallinn. No, they will infiltrate with even more spies and some kind of characters. That they will start the demonstrations for Russia. Let's keep together with Russia. Send back all these NATO clowns and so on. And they will see. They're clever enough to understand that the military power alone doesn't do the job. It has to be in conjunction with all other factors. And Russians are very skillful, probably more than anybody else, to bring all kind of pro-Russian factors. Well, Ivan, didn't it happen in Ukraine a few years ago when Russians activated a lot of pro-Russian powers?
Yeah, but it didn't help them actually, because it was their plan that pro-Russian powers, some pro-Russian politicians backed by Russia, will assist in their invasion, and that they will unite people about them. It was friend of Putin, Medvedchuk, who promised that a lot of people in Ukraine are supporting Russia. He promised Putin that Ukrainians will meet Russian tanks with flowers and all that bullshit, and that Ukrainian politician, but there was actually a KGB agent. He controlled several TV channels in Ukraine, which he used to broadcast Russian propaganda. And just before the invasion, those TV channels were blocked in Ukraine, and people talk that that was one of the reasons why Putin issued an order about launch of his so-called special military operation, because he understood that without powerful media resources in Ukraine, and obviously those TV channels were quite powerful media resources, that without powerful pro-Russian media resources and without the influence of pro-Russian politicians, he will not be able to change the public opinion of Ukrainians and make them support Russia and make them want Ukraine to be part of Russia, but not to go to European Union and NATO. So probably some percentage supports Russia. And now, according social research here in Ukraine, it's like 10% of Ukrainians which are not supporting Russia, but they want peace on Russian conditions, which means that they are silently supporting Russia, actually, and the same percentage, like around 10%, on upcoming elections in Ukraine, they're ready to vote for pro-Russian parties as well. So it's like 5 or 10 years ago, that number was several times higher. Before the start of Russo-Ukrainian war in 2014, when when Russia annexed Crimea and started war in the east of Ukraine, the number of Ukrainians who wanted to be ally of Russia, who are voting for pro-Russian parties, was like 30 or 40%. So now their influence decreased significantly, but unfortunately, there's still a high number. And what is interesting, that I've read another research about Ukrainians who watch Russian media. Like in YouTube, they read Russian media websites, and their number is like 10%. 10% of Ukrainians who are watching Russian media on YouTube, they're reading news on Russian websites, in social media, and of course they're influenced by Russian propaganda. They think that Russia is liberating them from, I don't know from what Russia is liberating. We've seen that video in the beginning, how Russia is destroying the cities and towns in Donbass, which actually were inhabited by mostly pro-Russian population, because it was historically that the Ukrainian population of the eastern part of Ukraine on Donbass specifically, they were more pro-Russian than, for instance, people who inhabited in the central part of Ukraine, in Kiev, or in western part of Ukraine, which is completely pro-European. So yeah, now Russia is liberating them from their life, from their apartments, from their from their comfort of their life, and sometimes, unfortunately, from their lives, because today I read a story news how Russia killed 2 elder persons who were going by road with a white flag. They were just in Kharkiv region. They were just trying to escape the zone of military actions, actually, and Russia used a drone to kill them. I don't know why, for fun, like they're doing that human safari in Kherson. They're just having fun from that. I don't know what they're doing that for.
And that just illustrates that some people will do evil things, horrible things, terrible things. Why? For the worst reason of all, because they enjoy it.
They enjoy it and it's permissible. There is no power that could enforce proper behavior. There's no such thing. Russians don't care from the top down. So even if general will do, probably general will kill even more people than a sergeant or any lower in command. So anyway, gentlemen, I would like to thank you very much for today's program. I think by Friday, we will have much more information of all things what happened around the world and, of course, in Ukraine. With that, thank you again and goodbye to all our listeners. And we'll see you Friday, same place, same time. Ivan, if you can, please do it again. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.